A lot of people kind of get caught up on like, what is the best that I can do? I need to be eating specifically these foods, and I need to be eating them with specifically these people. And what it does is that it causes tremendous stress in the body. That's raising blood sugars, it's raising blood pressure, it's raising all of that. Versus when I say, wait a minute, I would love to eat this food, but I actually can't afford it, or it's not available to me. Let me let go of that perfectionist standard that it doesn't fit into my life right now. What is the best that I can do with the resources that I have been given and what I have? And what I find, I see this clinically, that when people tap into that, into the acceptance of what I have and what are the resources available, their blood parameters are that much better than those who are like trying to chase this gold standard that is not benefiting them.
Hey, I'm Esther, and you are listening to On Your Own, the podcast for Jewish girls living away from home. Each week, we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you confidently navigate life on your own so you can achieve real growth and independence and take ownership of this foundational stage of your life. For additional resources, tips, and to stay up to date on future episodes, sign up for the On Your Own newsletter, linked below in the description. Looking forward to spending some time with you today. And now, to this week's episode. So I think I would want to start like this. What do you think, from your experience, maybe personal or working with others, is the biggest misunderstanding that we have around the topic of emotional eating?
Yeah, that's a really good place to start because I think it does start from a big misunderstanding. I'd say that, like, probably off the top of my head, I could be wrong, but about 50 to 75% of people coming into my office are saying, oh my goodness, I'm an emotional eater. And then when we break it down, that's not what we would call it.
Huh.
Okay? Because I find that it kind of falls into like four categories, four steps that make people feel like they're an emotional eater. And I really validate the fact that they feel that way. But once we kind of outrule them, it disappears. So what I find, number one, is hunger. People haven't fed themselves adequately. And so there'll be a time in the day that they're suddenly finding themselves like turning to food and feeling out of control around food. And it's at a time, let's say when they're coming home from work and they're feeling stressed, or they're alone and they're feeling lonely. So there is an emotion there that they're sensing. They're feeling tired. They are sensing an emotion, but because they haven't eaten or they've barely eaten the whole day, or haven't eaten enough, their body has actually blunted the signal of hunger. And they don't even know that hunger is playing into this as well. Okay? So number one, what we want to rule out is hunger. Okay, we want to make sure that people are fed adequately at consistent times, enough foods that feel safe to them, foods that feel good. That's number one. When I just start doing that with people, just that step, okay, sometimes nearly all the symptoms have gone away,
Whoa.
or most of them, because hunger is such a big part of it. So I think that's number one, a big misunderstanding there. Hunger is playing, and people are not feeling it because the body has blunted the signal. But once they feed themselves adequately, their body will return that signal to them. And then half of the pull to the food kind of disappears at those emotional times.
So I want to make sure like I understood that. Are you saying that a person will be feeling a strong emotion and then react to that by eating? So they think that means I'm an emotional eater, but actually, while they're feeling that strong emotion, they're also hungry, and that's actually what's driving them to the food more than the emotion. But they don't know that because they don't feel the hunger signal. So they're like, "Why am I going to the fridge? I guess it's because I was lonely. I guess it was because I was angry or whatever." So once
Yes,
that secret hunger is not pushing them, then they could feel lonely, and it won't push them to the fridge
as much or at all.
as much or at
Yes,
all. Wow. Okay. Okay.
yes. Okay, so that's number one. So number one is ruling that out. So making sure that hunger is ruled out. So before
Okay.
dealing with any emotions or anything, I will make sure that we've ruled that out. Okay,
Okay.
you come into my office, we get you set up with nice frequent eating times. Come back to me, tell me what you found, and generally, the pull isn't as strong. Okay, that's number one. The next misunderstanding is, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say deprivation. Okay, but there's definitely another better word to describe this. But a big part here is people feeling deprived, labeling foods as good or bad. Okay, and so they may be eating, but they're not eating the foods that they really want to eat or their body is asking them for. So at these times when they're feeling a strong emotion, um, like I said, hunger will play into that, but deprivation will play in too if they keep finding that they're going for the foods that they were saying, I shouldn't eat. Those are
Mm.
bad for me, either for health reasons or for the fact that they want to lose weight. Okay,
Mhm.
so that will drive in those times when there's an emotion playing up, they will be pulled to those foods. So, number one, we want to drive out the hunger. We want to make sure that people are fully fed. And number two, we want to make sure that they have made peace with food, that they understand that there's no food is neither good nor bad.
Well, I really identify with that because I would say, especially when I was in seminary, when I was emotionally, I was very lonely and then like eating and eating nonstop. I definitely wasn't hungry because I was binge eating at that time. Like I was eating a lot of food up until that point in the day, let's say, like objectively, a lot of food. Um, and yet I was still drawn there, and I see that I was drawn to the foods that I wasn't allowed to be eating. So I was maybe even eating a lot throughout the day, but not the foods that I wanted to be eating. And then I'd end up eating those foods specifically. So somebody who would say, yeah, but I know for sure I'm not hungry, I guess that would be like the next step. Like, yeah, but are you deprived? Not because you're hungry, but because you're not eating the foods you want to be eating.
Yes, exactly. So it can either be a combination of the two, that I'm hungry and I'm deprived, or it could be that I'm not hungry. I am actually well fed, but I'm only allowing myself certain foods, the good foods, okay?
Hmm.
And the bad foods, I'm not allowing myself. But what happens is that when we tell ourselves I shouldn't have something, okay, automatically we want it even more. So that food that we're not allowed to have, if it's the cake or the cookies or the pizza, whatever it is, has this like added glitter all over it. And it just makes it that much more enticing and exciting. So when there's a strong emotion playing in that I can't resist, I'm going to just turn to that food. So we need to really make sure that those foods that we label as bad, we need to go through them and see, what are my rules around this? What is my belief around this food? And is this really true? What will happen if I do allow that into my day to day eating habits?
So you were saying there's four things, so I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, but and if I am, you can let me know. Why is the emotion, why are strong emotions the thing that ends up drawing us to the food, even if like if we're deprived or if we're hungry or a combination? What's the correlation between strong emotions and food?
Yeah, that actually leads me to the next part, okay? Because
Okay.
I feel that my understanding is that emotions aren't necessarily, that there's happy, there's the comfortable emotions, joy, right? So the ones that we're comfortable with, and then there's a whole bunch that just aren't comfortable. Okay, and we don't like to be feeling uncomfortable. So we'll do anything we can to avoid that. Food is an incredible comfort, and so it's a great place to turn, especially if that's been something that we've been given since we were children to comfort us. It's just that go to, it's available. It makes me feel calmer, especially if I was hungry and I was deprived. It does make me feel calmer in that moment. So it makes sense that I'm going to be drawn to it in
Mm.
that time when I'm feeling a very strong emotion. So what that really leads us into the fourth step of being able to separate emotions and foods. Okay, being able to pause and say, okay, I'm feeling something now. What is it that I'm feeling? And tuning into that. Am I tired? Am I lonely? Am I feeling down? Am I feeling angry? Am I anxious? What do I need right now? And many times people just don't know what they need because food has always been the thing they turn to since they were kids. They were given, you're crying, okay, let me give you a treat, let me give you some food. So they don't know where to go instead. So there's that education part of being able to know that there are other coping strategies to deal with those emotions other than food. Food can sometimes be where you go. Sometimes it does fill that place, and that is what's necessary. But there usually are, like, again, there's actually four other categories for that emotional part.
So you're saying that there's an automatic correlation that we have between food and comfort. And because strong emotions, especially what we would call maybe negative ones, are uncomfortable, we've been almost conditioned from a young age to turn to food to try and alleviate that.
Many of us have been um, given that as kind of the only tool, or one of the only tools to cope with that those strong emotions.
Is that a bad thing?
So, as a tool in a set of tools, it's okay. But if it's the only tool, that's when we're walking into issues
Mm-hmm.
because we're not actually giving ourselves what we need in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, generally speaking, there's the again, the number four comes up here. I find that kind of falls into four categories of what people would need in that moment when they're feeling a strong emotion. Either they need some support, they need to talk to somebody. Okay, either they need some kind of self care. They're tired. They need space, or they just need to sit with that emotion. They actually need to feel it. They need to give themselves that space and time to sit and feel whatever they're feeling. Journal it, meditate on it, whatever it is. And then there's kind of a distraction part, which kind of overlaps with self care as well, where they may need to just go distract themselves for a little bit so that they can come back and then refocus on whatever it was that happened, the argument that they had with the friend, the stressful day. They need to just go and read a book, go for a walk, something so that they can then come back with a fresher perspective. So food can fall into that.
Food could be a distraction, I guess, because it does.
So yeah, so food could fall into the so it could fall into the distraction or self-care aspect. So I feel that sometimes when it's used for a healthy purpose, I'm using this because I'm feeling a really strong emotion, but I'm actually also really hungry. When I ask myself, what am I feeling right now? I realize that I'm actually hungry. I'm hungry and I'm really stressed out. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be an aspect of self-care of sitting down and giving myself some food. Okay. Um, Sometimes food can also work as that distraction in the sense of, like, you know what, I'm feeling so stressed out, and but maybe if I read a book and I, have an ice at the same time, or I sip a tea and I have a piece of chocolate, that can distract me and then kind of give me more joy and feel more centered to then go ahead and deal with it. That's okay. But when I sit down and I don't even know what I'm feeling, I don't even know what I need, but I just sit there and I take food and I feel comfort in it for a second, but then I've still got the emotion to deal with and it hasn't helped me, that's when we're walking into, you know, uh, what's the point of that?
Because then we're totally like losing touch with ourselves and what's going on, and we don't even know what we need.
Exactly.
Wow. And so what I recall, looking back, it's easy for me to identify like different stages. Oh, when I was in seminary, I was eating that way because I was very lonely. When I was high school, I was very stressed. I was very afraid. But in those moments, I didn't actually, I guess because I had never taken the time to sit and figure it out, I didn't know what I was feeling. I just knew I was turning to the food and I was an emotional eater. So for someone who's kind of new to that and doesn't have any idea what they're feeling, how can they start to become aware so that they can address it accurately, so that they can give themselves what they need in the moment?
So, so sometimes I say just retrospectively, kind of looking back can be really helpful first and foremost, because many times when people are just doing this is their go-to, they don't even realize what they're doing. They do it and then they just feel awful about themselves afterwards. So kind of in those times afterwards when they're feeling awful about themselves and why did I do that, to pause and say, okay, what happened? This keeps happening. I keep coming home from, I'm going to use that, coming home from work scenario, and I'm feeling stressed out. And I don't even know what I'm feeling, but I just sit there and I open the closet and I open the pantry and I just end up binging. What would I want to do differently? Now, it's a bit hard for people if they don't understand that hunger is playing into this and deprivation is playing into this, because many times they could try again and again. And if they haven't fixed the hunger and deprivation part, it's going to be really tough. Okay. But let's say that's ruled out. Okay. They could, that let's say they've dealt with the hunger, they've dealt with the deprivation. They could pause and say, you know, I keep doing this. What if next time I pause for a moment and I say, what am I feeling right now? What is it that I need? And they actually take a moment every single day, just half a minute, 30 seconds, to visualize themselves in that time frame, in that space where they keep coming home and binging, and instead picturing in their mind, I come home, I'm feeling stressed. I pause and I say, what am I feeling? What is it that I need? And I give myself, if it's what I'm feeling is stressed out and I need space, I sit down and I feel like I need a journal, I will sit down and I'll journal. So they need to like visualize that in their mind, and then when it comes to that time, it makes there's a pathway already kind of forming in their brain. It makes it that much easier to actually put that into action and break the habit, because we're working with a habit now that has been happening. It's a pathway that's been going on. We need to break that habit.
Hmm. The first thing that's coming to mind, I guess, because I've been speaking to seminary girls lately, is that a lot of the things that they maybe feel like they need aren't available to them, especially like girls who have left home and suddenly they're in a brand new environment. Maybe it's such a random example, but like maybe they just like need a bath or something, and there's no bath, there's only showers, or they need quiet, but they're surrounded by people, and all day they need a walk, but they don't know the area. What if people don't feel like they have the resources that they used to have to cope with these things? What would you advise?
Yeah, that's really, really tough when you're kind of in an environment and you feel that you need what you need just is not there. And again, it's kind of similar to when you've been using food as your only tool. You need to kind of think out of the box and think of other tools. And so it's kind of proactively, if this is what's happening, continuously to think, okay, I'm in a new environment. I used to be able to just take a bath and calm down or get some space or go for a walk, and I'm not able to do that now. What can I do in my new environment? What would be things that I could give myself so that I could calm down? And for everybody, that would be different. So, the bath used to do the trick, but there is a good shower here. Okay, it's not exactly what I want, but it may be good enough. Okay. I don't know the area, but maybe I could during the day walk out and try to map out, how the roads are when it's light outside, so that in the evening I won't be so afraid to go at night because I know where I'm going. Something like that. Everyone kind of, so it's really about proactively pausing, thinking what would help me in those moments, and kind of having a list of what are my go-tos,
Hmm.
what are like five things that I could do or three things that I could do in those times. I carry it with me. And so when I know I'm feeling this way, wait, I pull it out and I say, okay, either I go for a shower or I pick up a book and I read, or I put earphones in my, earplugs in my ear so I don't hear the noise and I can close my eyes and pretend I'm on a desert island and all alone, whatever it is.
Hmm. That's huge. So what I'm thinking now, and maybe I'm jumping around a lot, but I'm just I'm going with what comes up. I'm thinking back to the deprivation part because for me, I remember at some point starting to become aware of the emotions. I was working with somebody and she was telling me about, I had been shutting off my emotions for a long time. So starting to become aware and starting to put things in place. But I would notice, I would have the plan, I would know what I wanted, and I would still go to the food. And looking back, I know that that's because of deprivation, because there was the pull to the food was so strong that it overwhelmed all of my logic saying, yeah, but you're really, even like you're really thirsty. You really need space. It would just overwhelm all of that because that deprivation, I guess, would be so strong. So, um, what I guess going back to this number two, what would be some advice, some things someone can do to work with the deprivation so that the food isn't so strong that even when they logically know that they need this and they even have a plan for it, that they don't just keep turning to the food?
Yeah. Um, so one way, I mean, there's different ways of going about this, but one way that's coming to mind is kind of taking a moment and writing down on a piece of paper, what are all my blacklisted foods? What are all the foods that I say I shouldn't have, but I really would love to have?
Mm.
And kind of writing those down. And like I was saying before, um, writing down next to it, what is my belief about this food? If I eat it, I will die. I will break out in hives. I will gain loads of weight. The usual things that this is, what I usually hear. And then check in with the facts. So if you're not able to do that yourself because you don't know what the facts are, check in with a professional or, check in with somebody else or just we all have the answers inside of us. Check in and see what would really happen if I ate that slice of pizza. Is it true that the minute somebody eats a slice of pizza, they gain 25 pounds? Is that really true? Will I really break out in hives? Whatever the fear is that really true? So, kind of putting it down on paper first, addressing those fears first on a paper, and then at a pace that they feel comfortable with, taking like the least scary of those foods and kind of bringing it into their day to day life. So, let's say, somebody's terrified of eating bread and pizza and cake and cookies and chickpeas. I mean, because it could be for everyone, it's different, you know. Um, they could say, okay, what's the least scary of this lot for me? Okay, chickpeas is the least scary. I'm scared, but I'm not terrified. Okay, how can I put that into my life in a way that feels safe? Um, and so that I don't end up binging on it later on the day so that I don't, it takes the glitter off. When it becomes part of our everyday life, the glitter will wear off and it won't be as exciting and habituation will kick in. And so it won't be such a pull in those highly emotional times. So, for instance, let's go with, the bread example. Somebody's terrified of bread. Okay, what if, at my breakfast or at my lunch, I have usually, okay, at my lunch, I usually have just a salad with some salad dressing and some salmon, let's say. What if I threw in to start with a quarter of a piece of bread? Because I'm terrified to have a whole piece, but what if I just started with a quarter? And I do that every day for however long I need. And then slowly I will increase it. And then when I've kind of gotten used to that food, I will slowly introduce the next food on my list. So that's
Mhm.
generally like a more systematic kind of way of going about it. Again, that's not the only way. And, usually in life it happens once you break one food rule and one fear food, it kind of makes it more easier to break the other rules. But that's kind of
Mhm.
just for a more generalized idea of how to go about the deprivation part.
Mm. So what I was most afraid of, and what I hear from a lot of girls as well, there was that element of like, I'm going to gain weight. I'm going to, I'm just going to, something will dramatically change from eating one food. But there was the main, I think, fear was that I'll never stop eating it. So even if I say, okay, logically, I'm not going to blow up or I'm not going to break out in pimples or something, but like, what if I just don't stop? Because usually they have proof and evidence for that, that the last time they ate that food, they couldn't stop doing it. And so even that quarter piece of bread is scary because like, how do I know I'm not going to eat the whole bag?
Yeah, yeah, I hear that loud and clear. And that's a very, very common fear. Okay, and I totally hear that because what's happening is this is where the hunger plays in and the deprivation. When I'm haven't eaten or haven't eaten enough, okay, and I'm saying I shouldn't have this food, when I'm feeling a strong emotion, forget it. It's out the window. So let's
Right.
go with bread. I'm terrified of eating bread. I sit there, I'm feeling lonely. It's not one piece, it's the entire bag, maybe even two, maybe even three. Everyone's different. Okay? When I have eaten enough in the daytime and I'm working on that belief that bread is okay, it's safe, I can eat this, it's not gonna, cause me to go out of control. I will be able to eat that bread and I will be able to stop because my body's going to give me it gives me signals to tell me when I'm full, when I'm hungry, what foods I like, what foods I don't like. At first, it's going to be scary. And at first, the first time I do it, I will probably binge on it. I will probably eat more than I want to eat on it because that's normal. But when I know that I can have this food at any given time and I really trust that, I will stop. it's very scary because you've got to trust that initially that this I am going to stop. Taking that initial step when you've always kind of finished the entire box or the entire bag, and to trust that I'm actually going to stop is really hard. But when you
Yeah.
give yourself that space and you're in a calm environment and you make sure that you're comfortably hungry, and you say, I'm going to have this food and I'm going to really pause and tune in. How's the taste? How's the texture? How's the temperature? When you tune into that, you're going to realize that my body actually has this threshold point where it says, that was really good, but I've had enough. And I know that I could totally have this food again. And when I know I can totally have this food again, the drive isn't as big. But when the thought is, I can never have this food again, then of course I'm going to binge on it. I'm going to make the most of it because I can never have it again. Okay, but I know I can have it. I can have it as soon as I'm hungry again. I can have it again tomorrow. It's going to be available to me. Then the drive kind of lessens. So it's really about taking that first leap, which is terrifying. But once you do it once and you learn that for yourself, it makes it so much easier.
Hmm. And have you had people come back to your office and say, I tried that, I sat down, I did it all, I wasn't hungry and I still like ate the whole bag of bread.
Completely. Yes. Yes. Because it doesn't, not for, I've had plenty the reverse, that they've come in and they've been able to do it. But for some people, it is too much of a fair food. They kind of started on a fair food that was, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 10. One being scary, but 10 being terrifying. They may have picked a food that was like a number 8. And we really need to
Mhm,
like pick a food that was number 1. Or they
mhm,
did pick a number 1 food, but guess what? They were in a stressful environment, so they weren't able to really tune in.
mhm,
Sometimes they need somebody to be there with them. So I'll even have people come into my office and we'll sit there and we'll do it together. And, with somebody else, they may feel a bit calmer. So it's about, seeing what happened. And how could I shift this differently? What were the thoughts going on in my mind? Because yeah, that's very common to try the first time and even try the second time or the third time and it didn't work. But
mhm.
don't give it a go and keep trust. It's about trusting the process and knowing that I can do this eventually once I figure out the beliefs around this, get the right environment, etc.
Are there some people who are actually emotional eaters? Like all of this is kind of, they're sorting it all out, but like, is there a label? Is it a real thing? Like, is there a real label? Like, yeah, you're an emotional eater. Or is this, because what I'm hearing is maybe this is all just like a construct of lots of things coming together.
Yeah, so there are people who it's not hunger driven, it's not deprivation driven. It's simply this is my one and only tool.
And so I asked you this before, like, is it bad? And you said like, if it's your only tool. So like, what's wrong with it, like being your only tool? Why is that not just a tool then?
Well, what we're walking into is if it's your only tool and you're turning to food when you're not necessarily hungry for it and you're eating past fullness, and this is happening again and again. I mean, it's okay. None of us are perfect, and that happens to all of us. And it's okay. Our bodies are
Mhm,
incredible, and they can deal with that. But if this is happening on a constant basis, that I'm giving myself food when really I would be doing myself so much more of a favor if I paused and said, hey, you know what? Actually, I need a book right now. Or I can have a book and some food, but knowing, tuning in to what I'm feeling right then in that moment. That's the issue when it's a detachment, when it's I am detached from what is really going on inside of me and what I really need. Yeah, so sometimes sometimes people could pause and say, wait, what is it I'm feeling right now? I'm actually feeling really afraid or I'm feeling really lonely. And what do I need? Sometimes people don't even know what they need or what
right.
like you said before, they know what they need but it's not accessible to them. But they see that there is food around and you know what? This is the best I can do for myself right now. There's nothing else that I can turn to. I need a little bit of comfort. So when that's a step when I'm aware of what I'm feeling and what
Mm,
I need. I'm aware of what I'm feeling, I'm aware of what I need. I'm not able to give it to myself, but I'm making a conscious decision to say, you know what, I this isn't what I need right now, but it's the best that I can do. and so that food is going to fit that place. So again, there's the gold standard of, maybe in that case it would have been better if they reached out for support and whatever it was. But it's all about health is a balance, and it's about saying in this moment, in this time, what is the best that I can do? And sometimes the answer is, yeah, the best thing I can do right now is to sit down with those cookies, even though I'm not hungry for them, even though I sincerely know that it's not what I need. But that is a step in the right direction because I know it's not what I need, and I'm consciously making the decision versus that total disconnect and not even knowing and just feeling awful about what happened then. I don't even know what I needed or
Mm.
what I wanted.
It's more like you're in control of the food as opposed to the food controlling you. Just that awareness.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good step in the right direction. Yeah.
Mm.
And sometimes, like I said, it's not the best option, but it could be good enough. And so we're not ruling out that food can be a help sometimes. Um, but it's just knowing that there's steps and there's levels and there's kind of gold standards and knowing where you are and where you fall in that in the time and place that you're in.
Mm. Another thing that comes up a lot is like eating at night. You mentioned when you come home from work, right? But what I found for a lot of girls is that at night, that's when they feel like they're going to the food and maybe it's uncontrollable. And we've talked, it's possible that's because, right, they haven't eaten throughout the day. And so that hunger kind of piled up or things like that, or they've been having so much self-control throughout the day. So the deprivation kind of piled up till the nighttime. My question's a bit different, which is, are there times of day that we should be like avoiding to eat? Are there better times to eat, worse times to eat? Should we be feeling bad that the time we chose to eat the food and comfort ourselves was at night, maybe even like 1 in the morning? I remember having images of like the food just rotting because I'd once read that like your stomach can't digest it while you're sleeping. And so I just like have these scary images of like the food just like rotting inside of me because I'd eaten it at night. What's your take on night eating?
Yeah, really, really good question. Okay, so look, there is truth in the fact that there's 24 hours in the day. Okay, so we do want to kind of have something like 12 hours where that's kind of where we're getting our food in, and another 12 hours where our body is able to relax and digest that food. Okay, but it doesn't work out exactly like that for everybody and at every time. Okay, so you're talking about seminary girls. This is a year of their life, or 9 to 10 months, right?
Right.
Or girls who are away from home. It's a season. Okay, and people need to kind of remember that this isn't for my whole life. It's a season of time. And there is a hierarchy. Yes, it's definitely best to kind of get your eating time if you wake up about 7 a.m. to kind of get your eating time somewhere between 7 to 7, 8 p.m. at night. But don't make that a rule that I cannot eat after 8 because then you're really running into trouble, especially as a firm, if you're observant, there's Friday night meals, there's Malava Malka, right? So if you've got that rule, you're going to end up feeling binging, feeling guilty. So not to make this as a rule, to understand that I'm going to try get my food in and keep myself full so that when it comes to the nighttime and I need to eat, I can eat a portion and I can move on. Versus when it's a rule and I haven't been eating throughout the day, I'm going to end up binging at night. And that is not going to be beneficial for my body. It's much better if I kind of eat throughout the day and I eat at night as well. No problem. My body can handle that way better.
So our body can handle food at night if it's like a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it could totally handle that. The issue is that when people are going for long periods of time with not eating enough, and then in the evening, boom, they're loading themselves up with loads of food. That is such a load on the body to digest in
Mm,
one go. That is what
mm,
they're doing to their blood sugars is that, you know, they're making that their blood sugars are kind of on really low, and then they're kind of spiking up like a huge mountain to really high, and then the body's got to digest all of that. It's a big toil. What we want is really that our blood sugars look like hills. They're kind of going up and coming down slowly, up and down slowly, and that's what we do when we eat smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day. Okay, we run into chaos and havoc and chronic disease when we kind of go with long periods without eating, kind of like filling up gas in a car. You're letting all the gas, you're running on empty, and then boom, you bring it all the way back
mm,
up, and your body's got to now digest. And that's why people feel exhausted afterwards. They'll suddenly get headaches. They'll feel bloated, gassy. All these IBS, like concerns will come up because they're
Mm.
just not eating throughout the day. So again, if this is the lifestyle that you're at right now, that you're in a season, you're in seminary, this is part of life. There are Fabringans nearly every night, or there's partying every night. We need to remember health is a balance, okay? If I make these rules for myself, I cannot eat at night, I'm going to be losing out on social experiences. Um, and that's going to affect my health. That's going to affect my blood sugars and my cholesterol and my blood pressure, etc. I know some girls aren't thinking about those things, but
What, the
um,
social experience will affect the blood sugar?
yes,
Missing out? What do you mean by that?
yes. So let me show you actually. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, the six components of health.
Yeah. This is. I mean, again, this isn't exact science or anything, but it gives a good idea of how our health is made up of six things. There's our physical health, our mental health, our environmental health, our social health, our emotional health, our spiritual health. Okay, and each one of those has categories. Okay, um, under our physical health comes our eating. Okay, which actually makes up about 30% of this whole picture. Okay, now health is very much a balance of these six things. Okay, so
Physical
if
health.
somebody, yes,
Like the way our physical body functions is not just made up of food. Is that what you're saying?
not just food, it's how we exercise, avoiding drugs, let's say, being active, avoiding drugs,
Mm,
getting enough sleep,
mm.
getting that will fall under that category. Okay.
And that's
Now, if people,
30%.
yeah, so if people, we want to get this balanced. If we get totally focused on one aspect, like somebody who just exercises loads, and so they're not eating enough, they're not sleeping enough, they're not having a social life, guess what? They're going to have their their body is not going to be in perfect health. It will affect their
Mhm.
blood sugars. It will cause inflammation to occur in the body, and that can cause chronic disease down the line. Okay, so what we want to do is really get a balance of this and say there's the gold standard. Yeah, so I would be best if I had a nice gap of where I'm not eating and my body gets rest, but I'm in this environment right now. What is the best that I can do? Okay, so I know there's going to be Fabringans every single night or, social gatherings. I want to be a part of those. If I'm not, I feel isolated. And when I feel isolated, that actually has an effect on my physical body, okay, and how I digest my food. So what is the best that I can do? Let's not try to go and hit that gold standard. In my situation, what if I fed myself throughout the day and I leave room at the end so that I can sit and socialize and have a bite of whatever it is to eat? I don't have to sit there and feel deprived. And again, remembering that this is just a season, it's not going to be for the rest of my life, and this is the best I can do now. And then when I move on to the next season, I will find the best thing that I balance of what I can do for then as well. It's never going to be perfect, and it's not necessarily ever going to be the gold standard at every single moment. But and understanding that is going to be such a relief for your overall physical health.
So I definitely sacrificed relationships in pursuit of health when I left home. I had no idea at the time that that could be affecting my physical health. Like that's crazy. I don't think that most people know that that in pursuing physical health, you can actually be not taking care of the whole picture, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, um, the environmental, you said. And in that process of pursuing health, you could become less healthy.
100%.
I definitely saw that. I remember um, 11th grade was the year where I was like, then my number one priority was my physical health, and I was doing everything perfectly according to like what I'd read and what the internet says is perfect for health. And then at the end of the year, I remember my father driving me from doctor's appointment to doctor's appointment, and he turned to me and he was like, "If you're so healthy, why are you so sick?" And
Mm-hmm.
I remember because I was like, I wasn't getting my period and my hair was falling out. And I was having breakouts. He was taking me to all these professionals. And I remember he had said that. And like, I just started crying. I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm doing everything that they're telling me to. And I'm sick. Like the people who are just not even, they're just eating whatever they want. They're not going to all these doctor's appointments. So that's a really helpful thing to have in mind. And also what you said about seasons as well, the way you're eating in San or in the dormitory in high school, whatever it is, in college, it's not necessarily how you're going to eat for the rest of your life. So to keep that in mind is also just like a bit, it can calm you down a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of get caught up on like, what is the best that I can do? I need to be eating, specifically these foods, and I need to be eating them with specifically these people. And what it does is that it causes tremendous stress in the body. That's raising blood sugars, it's raising blood pressure, it's raising all of that. Versus when I say, wait a minute, I would love to eat this food, but I actually can't afford it, or it's not available to me. Okay, let me let go of that perfectionist standard that it doesn't fit into my life right now. What is the best that I can do with the resources that I have been given and what I have? And what I find, I see this, clinically, that when people tap into that, into the acceptance of what I have and what are the resources available, their blood parameters are that much better than those who are like exactly like you said, trying to chase this gold standard that is not benefiting them.
That's crazy. And you mentioned about the financial part of that as well, that girls like are very often limited financially, and then they know that they should be eating the salad or whatever it is, the vegetables, but it just costs a lot more. And then they can get so stressed because they have no money. And that's like a very stressful thing for the body as well. Like I was using all my money on all those fancy healthy foods, and then yeah, and he's stressing about money. And then the body, that takes a toll on the body as well. So the financial is also like, what can I afford right now? Like, let's just be upfront, because there will be girls in Sam or with you who, let's say, they have their dad's credit card and they could just order in healthy food every meal. Like they could do that. That's great for them. But if I did that same thing in pursuit of health, that might make me super stressed out, or my parents super stressed out and mad at me. Um, and then that's not health.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. What what are the things that when people start this kind of process of becoming aware of their emotions, of what's really going on? Is there deprivation? Is it hunger? What have you noticed are like the biggest challenges that come up, like like that can maybe get in the way of this process?
Okay, so if everyone is different, but the biggie that's coming to my head is the social peer pressure. Um, it's amazing, but the people that we love, the people that we are around, we trust more than somebody that we've just met for 5 minutes, or some
Or
advice
the
that we're hearing from
podcast,
somewhere else, or the podcast, exactly.
right?
Um, so people could hear this, they could resonate with them, and then they could try put this into practice, and then their friends or parents are seeing what they're doing, and they're like, that makes no sense. Like, seriously? You never used to eat cake and now you're eating cake like every single day. Like, how's that normal? Or you never used to eat bread and now you're having bread every day. Like, how's that normal? And then they'll question it. And there's an entire world out there that is obsessed with good and bad foods and dieting and whatnot. And so when they're trying to do something that's different, they're going against the tide, that can be the biggest and hardest thing.
Mm.
So I'll have people coming in, and they're like, I want to do this. I want to be able to feed myself. But you know what? My husband, he barely eats the whole day, and he keeps asking me like, why do you keep eating? What's wrong with you? You're going to gain so much weight, or something like that. I'm bodging up loads of stories together in one, but that kind of
Right.
picture, and then it will get in the way, and that's where they really need to work on, being able to tune in and say, okay, this is what they said. How can I set my boundaries? How can I understand what's best for me in this time and still respect them, and etc. And it walks into all of that.
That's so helpful. That to remember that alongside all the inside resistance you might have to this, there's also going to be outside stuff that you're going to need to deal with. And that might not have been anticipated for a lot of people. They're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Um, and then and then outside of themselves, there's all of this tension as well. That's really helpful to keep in mind. And so for someone who's, let's say, in an environment, when you're away from home in an environment where it's not so conducive to that, the people around you are just not so keen. What's like the biggest thing that can help them to keep going, even though there's all this pressure from outside?
So I hear, I mean, it's so hard. It is really hard. when you're trying to do something and everyone else is doing something totally different, it's really tough, and it really takes that inner strength of kind of keep coming back again and again and saying, okay, this is so hard, but if I do what they're doing, I try that on for size a minute, how does that work for me? Okay, so let's say I'm just going to go with a random example, right? Somebody's trying to do this, they're trying to be in tune with their body and deal with, the fact that they keep eating emotionally at some point in the day. But everyone around them is doing intermittent fasting, let's say.
Mm.
Okay. And it's about pausing and saying, wait a second, if I did that intermittent fasting, how would that work for me? I've tried it, and I know that I end up just binging at some point in the day. And that's when all this emotional eating actually started. When I started this, when I said I'm going to eat within these hours and I'm not going to eat outside the other ones. So I know it doesn't work for me. So I find that really that pausing and trying it on for size, what other people are saying, and
Mm.
realizing that this is not working. And even though I'm trying a new path and I don't actually know the outcome, I'm trusting other people who are telling me this or trying to trust myself. I know that the other path doesn't work. And so I'm going to keep putting my foot forward. When people tend to do that, they become stronger in their own conviction of it. And then they actually become that light to somebody else and they're able to teach
Wow.
somebody else what they have learned. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. I'm not. It's not an easy path. It's easier to just go with everybody else and do what they're doing.
Mm.
It is easier in the short run.
Well, until it doesn't work, and and
Exactly.
then you're stuck in no man's land. It's like, wow,
Exactly. But there's, but yeah, but there's still that there's a safety and the security in that rather than going out on your own, fighting against your own inner beliefs and fighting against any and everyone else out there. It's really hard. But if you stay strong, it's worth it.
wow. And it's probably, in this transition period that a lot of girls are in, they're like, they're not kids anymore, but they're not like fully settled in their life, trying to become independent adults. This can be so helpful for every area of their life when you learn to actually stand up for what you know is true for you in the context of food. I'm sure that can have ripple effects because we want to be creating a life that works for us, not that works for other people at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. I find that when people get this figured out in their life, their relationship with food, and they're able to go with it and stand strong, it totally ripples out into so many areas of their life. They're able to really just tune into what is it that I need, even though everyone else is doing this, is it that I value? What is important to me, and to go with that flow. And then again,
Mm.
like I said before, be that light to other people because everyone loves authenticity. Everyone respects people who are able to be who they need to be without having to impose it on everyone else just by through example.
Wow. So I end off with a question to all my guests, which is that if you could go back to the first year that you left home and where you are right now with all the wisdom and experience that you've gained, and you could share one thing with that, your past self that's just left home, what's the one thing that you would share with yourself?
Wow, wow. That's such a loaded question, and I'd love to like explore it more. But I'm just going to go with what just comes to my mind first and foremost is you're going to be okay. Hang on there. You are going to be okay, and it's going to be worth it. Every bit of this journey, every step of the way, all the bad, all the good, it's worth it.
It doesn't feel like that sometimes, that it's going to be okay in those moments.
Totally not. Totally not. And
Wouldn't that be
that's the
nice to hear that? Like
yeah.
actually to have that like past, to be able to actually have like this ghost of ourselves come back to us and be like, I know how things are going to play out and it's going to be okay.
It's going to have been worth it, and you're going to see the light at the end of that tunnel. If you look for it, you have to look for it.
You
Yeah.
have to look for it. You have to become aware,
Yes.
as we've been talking
Yes.
about. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Miriam.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of On Your Own. If you like this episode or think it will be useful to someone else, please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I would love to connect with you. If you've got any questions, feedback, or ideas for future episodes, you can email me at onyourownpodcast@gmail.com. See you next week. And in the meantime, happy adulting.